When I was a kid, we sort of conflated nuclear reactors with nuclear bombs. So we built the bombs, then we did not build the reactors. If we had done it the other way around, you never would have heard of global warming. We invented a machine that can suppress a hurricane and keep them from causing so much damage. We have a team working on taking the solar farm and putting it up in space. The reason you would do that is because...
Hello everyone, thank you so much for being here in this episode of the Supercharged podcast. We have a fascinating guest today, and his name is Pablos Holman. He's an author of The Deep Future. He's an innovator, and he's done pretty amazing things.
Thanks.
A little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Well, today I run a venture firm called Deep Future. And what we do is we invest in mad scientists and crazy hackers and inventors who are coming up with new technologies, that could help solve big problems in the world. So that's not the same as most of what the rest of the tech industry is doing, but it's a way to aim technology at solving more important problems.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's really valuable because
Yeah, it's exciting because we think we live in this world full of tech, but really it's just a world full of software. And so what deep tech is about is trying to change that. Now we've done everything you need to do with software. Now we had to redo it for the web and had to redo it for mobile, and now we have to redo it for AI. But basically, software is a solved problem. So meanwhile, all these big 100-year-old industries like construction or energy or water or food or transportation or manufacturing, those are things that you won't make them 10 times better or 100 times better with just software, but sometimes we can do it with a new invention.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
You've probably been always curious, and what was the first thing that you've invented?
Oh man, I don't know.
Invention or a hack, something?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I got one of the first computers you could have at home. And I grew up in Alaska, which is pretty remote, and so nobody had ever even seen a computer. And most of the time, the first computer people saw was mine, And so in those days, computers weren't very useful, and so people were, not really convinced this was a good waste of time, but I was really excited about them. So I learned a lot about computers when I was young, and I'd say the process of learning when you don't have anyone to teach you is very much about just trial and error. So I would just, crash the thing and reboot it, trying to learn how it worked. And I learned a lot about computers that way. And computers did turn out to be useful, and we were able to take them a lot of places. So I spent a lot of my, early career just trying to put computers in different industries and businesses for the first time and get people excited about them and show them how a computer could make their life better. And so that I really started with computers. And then, maybe after doing that for a long time, in the early 2000s, I started working on using computers to advance other kinds of technologies. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's where a lot of the superpowers come from now. Computers are awesome. I love them, but we can use them to bring other technologies to life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing. I saw you when you were speaking at the summit event, and it was amazing talk.
The solar panels, like I was describing, is nighttime and clouds. And so one of the ideas that we have a team working on is taking the solar farm and putting it up in space. And the reason you would do that is because space looks like nighttime all the time, but really it's noon in space all the time. We just have a bad angle on it for half of the time. Mm-hmm. So a solar panel in space would get sun 24 hours a day. And then you can beam that energy down to Earth using radio waves that go through clouds in the middle of the night. And so it's a way to turn solar energy into something that's what we call base load. That means energy that runs 24/7. Mm-hmm. And it's a way to do that and still get the benefits of solar, which is that it's pretty low cost and reliable and carbon free.
you build AI systems, and before most people even knew what is AI.
Yeah.
So where do you think we're really headed with AI?
Yeah, well, AI has been kind of a moving target largely because, we just keep redefining whatever AI means to be whatever we have right now. So I worked on AI systems in the late 90s, early 2000s to try and make systems that could read the news and read the news and figure out if it's good news or bad news, and maybe figure out if it's about a particular stock that you could maybe trade on, things like that. And in those days, the AIs were what we called expert systems, and they weren't nearly as capable of reading, you could say, as what we have now. And that's a big part of why people are so excited about AI now, is that AI speak English now. And before, you needed a PhD to understand them. So now, with LLMs, we have AIs that people can interact with. And that actually turns out to be a very, very useful thing. It's been good to get people excited about computers again and get them excited about a whole new way of using them and lots of capabilities. There's a lot of, I'd say, misunderstanding about what these things are good for and how they work right now, but that's getting better and better all the time. Every week these AIs are improving dramatically in different ways, and we're making lots of new ones. The thing that excites me is not chatting, but using the computational capacity that we have to try and go solve bigger problems. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that you can't really do with computers just because they're too slow, they're too feeble, they don't have enough memory, they're not fast enough. But now that we're building these gargantuan supercomputers, they're going to be able to help us create models for other things besides language, make models for, every neuron in your brain or every microbe in your gut or every cell in your body, things that have eluded us. And we'll learn a lot more about ourselves because of that. And then, in businesses, we could model not just a spreadsheet of a business, but the entire industry and all your competitors and your entire supply chain. And when you have a model, then you can run simulations. And that's really what is so powerful about AI, is you could run a simulation of a decision you might make. What if I, change this about my business or order from that supplier instead of this one? Or, if I can cut the cost of this component, you can see how that plays out. You could see your possible futures, and that can help you make better decisions. And that's going to be true for everything.
Yeah. Okay, so you worked on hurricane suppression machines, on malaria zapping lasers, nuclear reactors from waste. How do you even start building tech that sounds like sci-fi?
Right, yeah. A lot of the projects I've worked on really do sound like science fiction. But that's because the job of science fiction is to imagine the future. And so some of these futures are easier to imagine than to build, but eventually we can build them. And right now we're in this amazing position where we have gotten good at doing new things, I would say. That's what startups and venture capital in the tech industry have really systematized. It's very, at least in the US and especially in Silicon Valley, it's quick and easy to make a company, to get a team together, to get it financed, to go build a thing, to ship it. And we're really systematized about all of that. And we're aiming it mostly at software, but we can co-opt that machinery and aim it at other things as well now. And so the exciting thing now is that we have the best toolkit in all of human history to be able to go build new things. And so a lot of the sci-fi sounding things are actually quite possible to build. So a lot of, even the solar and space, it might sound crazy, but we have all the tech to do that. Mm-hmm. We have solar panels totally work.
Yeah.
We're making them better and lighter and cheaper all the time, but that's all solved. The power beaming thing, a lot of people don't know about, but it's really the same technology you would use for satellite communications, but instead of sending data, we're sending energy. Mm-hmm. But beam forming and beam steering that you do in radio is really good now. And then the hard part of that was always launch cost, because it was just too expensive to put things in space. we're used to thinking it's expensive because when I was a kid, putting a iPad in space on a space shuttle would have cost $40,000. Now it's about, because of SpaceX, it's really down to about $1,500. But their target for their big rocket, Starship, is 10. So this decade we'll be getting to a point where it's cheaper to store your old sports ball equipment in space than in your garage. That's what's happening.
Wow.
And so when you have those kind of economic drivers, and even if it takes a little longer to get to those prices, right now it's already at a point where it would be economical to do space solar. So things like that, just because haven't been done before, people think they sound crazy. But a good example of this cycle is like the Waymo cars. Have you been in one of those yet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen them.
Okay, yeah. Are they in Miami? Or?
Yeah, they had them before. Now
Cool.
I don't see them anymore, but
okay.
they used to.
Yeah, well, they've done big deployments in San Francisco and Austin and LA and some other places. But what's very interesting about a Waymo car, which drives itself, is when people, if you watch like your friends, the first time they get in one, they will freak out and be, like there's no driver, and it seems wild and crazy. Thinking about where to go for lunch, and they'd never think about it again for the rest of their lives. That's how fast people learn to adapt to a new technology once they experience it. It's really hard and slow to get people to adapt to something if they've never seen it or experienced it. And so, since I'm kind of working on these things before they're real, I have to be able to kind of suspend disbelief and believe in them and work on them and try to figure out how to make them real. And a lot of people aren't really, built for that part of the life cycle, but they can get on board really quickly once it does become real. And that's what we'll see happen with a lot of these technologies.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, from all of these incredible technologies, inventions, which one do you think will be the most impactful to be solved for the world?
Well, the most important problem to solve is energy. And the reason for that is lots of other things map to energy. So if you have clean, cheap, abundant energy, then you could make clean water, for example.
Yeah.
Now we've solved a lot of the really important problems in the US because we can just throw money at it. And it may not seem like we're rich, but compared to most of the world, we really are. And so if you think of, nobody in America thinks about clean water. You might be thinking about, can I get Evian water, or can I get, or Fiji water, or Iceland water? But that's not really solving the critical health problem. The critical health problem is, can you get potable water? Can you get clean water? Can you get something that's not going to make you sick? We don't have that problem because we've solved that nationwide. Billions of people live in a place where that is still not a solved problem. And the reason is you need energy to clean the water and to manage sewage and those kinds of things. And so we solved a problem for ourselves by burning lots of stuff. So you could say in the US or Europe, first we started burning trees, then we started burning whales. We literally cut up whales and burned the oil out of whales, which was a really sad state of affairs. And then Rockefeller figured out they could get oil out of the ground and burn that. And so we did that for a century, and burning coal out of the ground. So we burned we burned everything we could find that would burn. And that was a way to, we kind of want to vilify everybody for making such a mess by burning everything. But the truth is, though, that I think it's better to think of it as like a developmental stage. Like we had to go through that. It's like the reason you and I exist is because all this stuff was burned so that we could be, we could live a life that's healthy and whatnot. And so now we're kind of past that stage where we know how to make energy that can scale, that is cheap, that isn't going to make health problems, that isn't going to damage the environment to such an extent. And, some of that has been possible with solar, but, the biggest potential is in nuclear reactors. And so right now, the technology that we have that doesn't need a breakthrough, doesn't need, any, new technology to do it, that can scale and meet all those needs as nuclear reactors. And people often don't know that. When I was a kid, we sort of conflated nuclear reactors with nuclear bombs, and then we outlawed the wrong one. Mm-hmm. So we built the bombs, and we did not build the reactors. Mm-hmm. If we had done it the other way around, you never would have heard of global warming. Mm-hmm. That's what's possible.
Wow.
And we're living on the wrong fork in history. Mm-hmm. And we're still not being honest with ourselves. A lot of more people die every year on this planet because of the pollution from burning coal and gas and these nasty things that we burn than all the other forms of energy combined. Nuclear reactors are safer than all other forms of energy, even safer than solar panels. Mm-hmm. Like more people die falling off the roof installing solar panels than have ever died from nuclear reactors. So we need to kind of course correct on these stories that are in our heads and get a better, more positive story. And then we can start to really shape the future and make it much better for everyone. And that's what really gets me excited.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Before we dive into the book, I'm going to ask you one more question. And what was the weirdest idea that you've ever considered building?
Oh man, the weirdest idea. We have a lot of weird ideas. One of them, which I think we should talk about since you're living in Miami, is, and that you mentioned, is we invented a machine that can suppress a hurricane and keep them from causing so much damage. And it's controversial. Some people think that the hurricanes are getting more frequent, more intense, and because of global warming, or maybe it's because of something else. It doesn't really matter what you think. Any hurricane that's going to wipe out Miami is probably worth, trying to prevent. In the same way that it would have been great to have prevented something like a Katrina from happening. I mean, the damage and the suffering from that is extreme. So anyway, the simplest thing we ever invented, maybe not the weirdest, but the simplest, is a giant tube. You put it in the ocean vertically, and it has a ramp around it, kind of like an artificial beach. So what that does is it causes waves to crash over the little ramp and push hot water on top of the ocean into it. So the reason hurricanes exist is that sun shines on the ocean, heats up the surface, and then that heat re-irradiates and it rises off the surface of the ocean. That fuels hurricanes. That's where they get their energy from. So if you could cool off the surface of the ocean, the hurricanes might not be so bad. And so this tube brings the hot water into it. That creates hydraulic head, meaning it just add more water on the top. It's going to push it, pump out the water below. Well, everywhere you have hot water on top of the ocean, you have cold water below. And so this thing is just pumping the hot water down where it mixes up with the cold water, and that brings the surface temperature down. And you bring the surface temperature down a little bit, and you can get your Cat 5 hurricanes down to Cat 4 or Cat 3, which, where they're not causing so much damage. And so you might need a couple thousand of these things out in the Gulf or something, and they're big. In our design, they were 80 meters in diameter, so a pretty big ring. And then the tube is just polyethylene, like a hefty bag material. So you put that thing in the ocean and it'll bring the surface temperature down for about a square kilometer. So you put a bunch of them out there, and it's kind of a large scale project, but it might cost hundreds of millions or maybe $1 billion. And then how much damage is done by hurricanes? Katrina, I think the estimates are $75 billion of damage, and that's not even counting how the suffering doesn't get added in there. That's just the damage.
Yeah.
So much lower than the cost of hurricane. Problem with that is there's no business model. So you have what's called a free rider problem if insurance pays for it. Now, if Allstate pays for it, then State Farm gets it for free.
Yeah.
And now State Farm can charge less, and Allstate goes out of business. So there's no business model that works. Government needs to do this, but in our lifetime, governments have kind of gotten worse and worse about doing large-scale infrastructure projects.
Yeah.
So that's where that's at.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
There's
Easy one to do. There's no computer chips in it. It's the simplest thing. It's just a tube. That's it.
Yeah.
And the only sort of inadvertent, people ask about what are called, like unintended consequences of these new inventions. Well, the only one anybody's been able to come up with for this is that the thing brings nutrients from the colder water into the warmer water that feeds plankton, which grows and then feeds fish. So it's kind of an inadvertent fish farm. It sort of accidentally repopulates the fish in the ocean.
Wow.
Which we've also diminished dramatically.
Yeah. So that's a positive impact even for
there
the
you
oceans.
go. Yeah. The only side effect we know of is quite positive.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, tell us a little bit about the book that you just launched.
Yeah,
right?
thank you.
Yeah. What made you write this book, and what is inside?
This is a book. The book is also called Deep Future, and the subtitle is Creating Technology That Matters. And that's what the book is really about. And I brought this one for you, so I'm going to sign it actually.
Oh, wow.
I'll sign that and send it.
Thank you so much.
Send it home with you. I know you got to check out the audiobook already, right?
Yes,
okay,
yes.
Cool.
I went through it.
What did you think of the audiobook? I read it myself.
Yeah, amazing, amazing book. So much insights. It's incredible book on invention, talking about invention, and one of the most important things that we are doing with the world is with invention. And
that's for you.
Thank you so much. That's incredible. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
No, I'm excited that they took the time to read or listen to the audiobook. And
yeah.
I think invention is where you get all your new superpowers. You get all your new force multipliers to go take on some problem that that humans have, that we've been trying to solve, and instead of maybe solving it 1% better each year, solve it 100% better, 1,000% better. That's what's possible sometimes. And I think now is the time when we get to go do that in lots of other industries, the things that every human on earth relies on. And so the book is trying to show what some of those problems are, show some of the technologies that are coming to help solve those problems, and that's a way to get inspired and get excited and be a little more hopeful about the future. And then also I'm trying to explain how we can do these things. How do we bring these things to life? How do we make them real?
Yeah.
And help people understand what the kind of machinery is for doing new things. And so there's a lot of that in there. There's some stories from my wild career in there. So people really enjoy reading. I try to write a book that's very accessible, so anyone can love it. You don't need a PhD to read this book. It's not like that.
Exactly.
So.
Talking about complex problems in a simple way.
Great.
And how they can implement AI systems and what is how the business is changing in the future, and how their businesses, their lives are going to change and expand by using those technologies as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, I think. I mean, even for me.
Yeah.
Just how accessible these tools are. Every day there's new ones coming. It's super exciting just to be able to, try new things. I have to force myself not to play with them because I would spend all day, building stuff with AIs, and it's not what I need to be doing right now.
Yeah. And they go super fast. Everything comes up in a fast space. Something new comes up all the time.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So what do you think, what AI technologies are the most fascinating for you when it comes to your business?
Yeah, well, so if you think about, so my actual business is I run a venture firm. And so what that really means is I need to be able to keep track of a lot of problems, technologies, and people. A lot of what we do, if you think about a founder of a startup, maybe as a scientist or an engineer, they've invented something that we think is important, and we want to invest money to help them get going. And a lot of times it's that moment where they're kind of coming out of a lab and into a startup. That's where we get involved. So we're often the first investor for these new technologies. And so we have to dig in and understand the technology. That usually means even, I know about a lot of things, but I often have to phone a friend and get somebody who knows more than me about this particular technology to look at it with me and help me figure out if it's a good idea, if it could be the best idea, if it's something that could be developed in a 5 or 10 year window, because that's sort of how venture capital works. So those are things that I'm trying to answer, and sometimes I want to get other people. So I have to have a huge network of experts because we invest all over the map in a lot of different industries. So I can't know about all of them. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times because I have a pretty extensive network and my partner does as well, we're able to kind of bring in folks who can help us. That's important. And then even once we do invest, we want to help those founders. A lot of times they need to find their first team members, partner, customer, investor, things like that. And a lot of founders are under-networked, and you kind of want them to be. Mm-hmm. They need to be focused on their thing. But we can fill in that gap by bringing those connections for them. So anyway, I have been making a database. We use Notion. A lot of your founders probably use Notion. I love Notion. So I turned Notion into my kind of CRM. Mm-hmm. And it has thousands and thousands of people in there that we know or have met, or some who we hope to meet, things like that. But that's all investors, startups, founders, their companies, they're all in there. So I have little databases in Notion of people connected to companies. And I connect all them to different topics. So they're all tagged with, nuclear or energy or, hurricanes or whatever. And then, so that's my little way of making a CRM. And I love that how flexible Notion is. Since I know a lot about software, it was easy for me to set up Notion to do what I want. Not everybody is going to be good at that, but there's templates and things that can help you. And then I love that it works on mobile. So we're on the go all the time. So I can just pop in Notion, look somebody up, things like that. Like you're probably in Notion,
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and you're probably linked to Summit in Detroit, so I can look somebody up, see what events we've been at together, where I met them. Notes from calls are in Notion. Mm-hmm. Now that we have things like Limitless that are recording and transcribing the calls, there's a zillion tools for that now, but they record the Zoom calls and stuff, and they put all that in notes in Notion, so I can go see that. So what I want, where this goes, where I want it to go, is I should be able to just talk to Notion. I should be able to say, like you're traveling in New York. You should be able to go say, hey, I'm in New York for these couple days. Who do I know that's in town that, might be a good guest for a podcast or something, Mm-hmm. And it should have come up with those answers for you. Yeah. So I don't think I have the right AI tools for that in Notion. Mm-hmm. I'm looking around at what tools could do that for me. I want to be able to go to Notion and say, hey, we're about to invest in this nuclear reactor. Who could help me evaluate the technology? Who else might be good investors for this company? Who do I know that might be a good team member for them? I want to be able to ask my AI that kind of stuff. It should totally be able to do that for me, but none of them do that yet. So if you know them, tell me about it. I would love to hear. But I know that that's going to exist in months and not years. Mm-hmm. This is not a technology problem. Somebody just has to make that product. This is a product problem. So once that product exists that can do a good job of that, then I'll either copy my data from Notion or move my data from Notion. That's what I want. Mm-hmm. And so, I think what a lot of business owners need to be doing right now, kind of like me, is just get your head around your own data, get it organized, collect all the data, make sure you're not losing data, because the AIs are going to get good at putting that to use for you, and you will be able to ask it questions about your business. Your business is probably different than mine, but you'll be able to do that. And in order for it to do that, it really needs to. The way to think about it is it really needs to know you. It needs to know you. It needs to know your business. It needs to know your customers. It needs to know your industry. So you need to be able to bring that data to the AI. That's the part that I think is going to give people an early advantage of using these tools in their business. And so somebody will be trying to sell me the thing I just described, probably this month or next month or this year for sure. Like that's how fast this is moving. So I know it's coming.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to be ready to put it to use. I do try to stay up, but there's too many AI products. I couldn't know about all of them. Some people try. I don't even try. I just they have to. That kind of thing doesn't need my help. I wouldn't invest in those things anyway because there's too many of them and too many other investors are interested in that. So I don't think it needs my help. But I'm going to go do the renegade stuff that nobody invests in. But to do that, I have to pay attention to a lot of different technologies and scientific breakthroughs and things that are coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
We have just invested in a company that invented they actually discovered a new breakthrough in magnetism, which is very rare. We basically know everything there is to know about magnetism. So it's pretty strange that they were able to come up with a new configuration of magnets that makes what's called a virtual magnet that's tripolar. So every magnet you've ever seen has north going one way and south going the other. And if you try to kids will try to balance, like when I was a kid, I would try to balance these magnets on top of each other, but they're unstable, Well, these guys have figured out how to make a magnetic field that's north up and north down with south in the middle, like a sandwich. And a magnet will float there. So it's a super cool discovery, but they were able to use that to create the most efficient electric motor ever. So electric motors, turn electricity into motion, right? And you want more motion for the amount of electricity you put in. A lot of them just make more heat and less motion.
Yeah.
So the more efficient a motor is, the better it is. And so for drones and airplanes and things that we want to use electric motors on, this is an incredible breakthrough because now they're getting insane performance out of an electric motor that will go on. I think it'll go on every drone and every flying thing for sure, but it could go in cars and be used in generators and things as well. So that's a really cool breakthrough. We have what else? I mean, we just invested in a company that I closed today.
Oh, congratulations.
So no one's heard me talk about this. It's called, so the electric motor company is called Paranetics. So you can look that one up. The one we did today is called Terran Robotics. And these guys figured out they invented a drone. And what it does, it's like a drone with like a skill crane. It's got a claw on it. And it'll go pick up Adobe mix, which is like clay. And it's a mix of clay and other stuff that can be used to construct those homes that they look like terracotta. They're Adobe homes. And mostly in the Southwest in the US, they're these clay homes, and they have great thermal properties, but and they're high value homes, but they're expensive to build because they're so labor intensive. And what we don't really have in this country is labor. Nobody wants to work. So this robot, it's a drone. It picks up the clay and it puts it on a wall, and then it has a kind of like Theragun, and it runs along the wall to smooth it out, and it can build walls, and it can build a home, and it's a drone. And so so two guys and a drone can show up on a site and build all the walls for a home. And so it's a way to make these great homes very low cost. And they're just going into production, starting to build the first homes this way now.
Wow.
And I've been so excited about that team. I've actually known them for a couple of years, and they've been working at it and making it better, and it's really good. We finally got to invest. So
that's incredible.
yeah, really cool stuff.
Yeah, really cool. It's gonna be so much easier to build everything with these technologies. You're just gonna be able to advance faster or try new things.
Totally. And people, I think it's hard to imagine what that's like, but that's what's coming. You know, the computers, historically, the computers could really only do things that were really a very discrete, logical set of steps. And they didn't have real good understanding of their environment and their ability to see and understand what's around them. Like all the robots we built for factories up until now, they were in cages. Mm-hmm. You know, you go into a Ford factory, there's a robot that helps weld something together, but it doesn't have eyes. And it doesn't know if a human is near it. If you get near it, it'll chop your head off by accident. It doesn't know to stop. Mm. So modern robots, one of the great things that the computation has solved, that we now call AI has solved, is vision. The machines are really good at seeing what's around them, and they're getting better at understanding that. Mm-hmm. And that is very key. Those are two different things, but they're getting better and better at understanding. And so the robots can operate alongside humans, and they can help people, and they can learn from people, and they can, augment the people. And so that's really going to go everywhere. And it's really important because it's going to help us be able to take on a lot of these things. It's not, so for example, one of the amazing things that people don't think about that you get if you have a robot building your home, the robot can also build and it can unbuild. Mm. We build these homes and they're supposed to last 50 years, but we often try to drag it out and make them last 100, and they're falling apart. Mm. And they're getting worse and worse, and they're getting less safe, and they're getting, less functional. Well, if the labor is cheap, then you can have it go take that down and build up a better one. Mm-hmm. All right, I'll sleep in the guest room while you go rebuild my bedroom. And it could do that. Yeah. And so, I think we're going to be able to. It's going to take a little while to build enough robots. We got to build millions of robots, but we'll get there. Right now, I believe China's building and deploying maybe a few 100,000 robots a year, if I remember right. We're down in the thousands. So we have a ways to go to close that gap, but we really need to be at millions of robots a year. Mm-hmm. And we'll get there. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be really helpful. But you could think of Waymos as an example. That's a robot that drives you. It's safer than a human. My daughter just got in a car wreck yesterday. I mean, her and her best friend could have died yesterday. In the passenger seat. Saved her life. Mm-hmm. But, It's just a kind of a no-fault accident. They were, going through an intersection and somebody coming a little fast the other way, and it's scary stuff.
It is.
And the thing about teenagers, you teach them how to drive. Every new teenager, you got to start from scratch and teach them how to drive, and some don't learn very well. Yeah. And robots, you teach one, and all of them learn. Mm-hmm. And so, if a Tesla runs over a soccer ball, by the next day, every Tesla on Earth knows never to do that. Mm. Like they understand. Okay. And so the thing that's hard for people to calibrate to is just the staggering scale at which robotics can advance. And it's still really hard. There's lots of things that are difficult engineering to do in robotics, but we have the fundamental technologies to make them really, really good.
Amazing.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for being part of the Supercharged.
Great.
And coming to the podcast. We had an amazing conversation, and I'm going to upload all the links of Pablo so you can find him. How they can find you? LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on everything, honestly. I've been on the internet since before most people were born. So, but yeah, LinkedIn is a good place to follow me. If you go to deepfuture.tech, that's our website. The book is there. The podcast is there. Our portfolio of wild technologies is there. And, we have our own newsletter about, just to hear about the new things that are coming. People really love that. I try to never send anything unless it's inspiring.
I received the newsletter.
Oh, good.
No,
okay.
It's great.
All right. Yeah. Thanks. And then, but we have that and WhatsApp